Hello, everyone, and welcome to the stream scene. We're here to start your week off with an awesome episode on accessibility and streaming. And first, we're going to open up with a big thanks to Elgato for sponsoring today's stream, especially the Elgato Wave, which just came out. The Elgato Wave 3 is a USB microphone that's more like a microphone and a mixer all in one. With Elgato's Wavelink software, you can easily route your audio from hardware or software applications and control the volume for you and your audience independently. The Elgato Wave 3 is now available at elgato.com, and you can win some cool Elgato stuff every week on the StreamerSquare Twitch channel. So this week, we're giving away an Elgato key light right here during the episode, which you can enter at any time by typing !light in chat. So big thanks to our sponsors, Elgato, for sponsoring our show. Thank you. So we're gonna open up with some introductions. Hunter, starting with you. Who are you? And what are you doing here? I don't know. We already know who you are. How you doing?
Questions. Who
Have
are
you
you?
been here before?
Get on the show.
First time here. You know what, Hunter? It's actually our unofficial 100th episode.
Is it really?
Unofficially 100th episode. It's my 100th folder that I've made for the show. So,
Well, that's not surprising. I did not know. Well, when's our official one?
well, I don't know. It's we don't have an official count.
I'm sorry, it's actually our show now. We've taken over. Welcome to the Cherry and Steve show, everybody. It's nice. We've actually, as of now, we own StreamerSquare. We signed the paperwork a minute ago.
Wait, I
Thanks,
didn't agree
Loco.
to this. I have too much work already.
That does sound true. You were talking about that in the pre-show. Well, that was my introduction. StevenSpohn and CherryRae joining us today. Incredible human beings. If y'all wouldn't mind introducing yourselves in a way that would be far more professional than what I did, go for it. Steve, we'll start with you.
So my name's StevenSpohn. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Able Gamers, streamer, writer, YouTube video, philanthropy, talker, guy who writes books, guy who tries to make the world a better place. I also dabble in ancient mythology. I like to make potions on the weekend. Wait, no, I'm just making stuff up. No, I'm just basically just a guy who tries to run around and make people feel better about themselves, because I think there's not enough positivity in the world, and my job is to try to brighten it up just a little bit.
All right. And you know, that, just for the record, that was super believable.
I was like,
do you
we
really?
should
Are
just
you an
talk about
alchemist?
that the whole time, like potions.
CherryRae, what about you?
Well, I used to make potions when I was a little kid in the back garden. Anyway, but now I don't make potions. But you know what? It's weird because I haven't actually been on camera outside of work meetings in a while, so I can't remember how to introduce myself. So let's see if I can remember all the
Fair.
things I am. But mainly, I'm the accessibility project manager at Ubisoft. So I'm a games developer during the day, and then not at night, I'm asleep, but I'm very tired. But I'm also a speaker and a presenter, and I've been streaming for a few years, and just a generally very active part of the community. Even before streaming, I used to live tweet my game playthroughs because I was too scared to stream.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, now I've been streaming a few years, but
I watch Iron Spike do that sometimes, I think. She'll do like Kenshi tweet the whole tweet thread of just her bizarre playthroughs.
yeah, and I used to make up a hashtag. Like every single game would get its own hashtag, and then like photo modes would get their own hashtag. So they're still out there, like you can find them.
That's cool. Huh.
That is interesting. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about accessibility, and I feel like it's one of our more common questions about, how to make streaming work while, having a disability. And, I'd love to start off with kind of touching on that and talking about, your guys' experience with streaming, because, typically it's, you're in front of a computer for hours on end. Like, people think you got to stream like 6+ hours. Like, even, I mean, I even struggle with like remembering to take breaks and drinking water and staying hydrated and staying healthy. Like, so, you know, if you guys could talk a little bit about your experience with just like getting into streaming for the first time and what that was like.
Do you want to go ahead, Steve? We're both too polite to start.
We are way
You
too polite.
first.
Yeah, you're gonna have to point to one of us, or we're both gonna sit here like, go ahead after you.
You started streaming first, so you go first.
Okay. My claim to fame is Sherry pointing to me as one of her inspirations. So I'm just their inspirations. So I'm just a guy who got lucky, and I had a friend who basically said, you know, you like to play games, and streaming is pretty fun. You should give it a shot. And I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to stream. My experience with streaming in very tacitly from being in the games industry for almost a decade before I considered Twitch was that it was a toxic playground, and that if you came here, you were going to get trolled, you were going to get made fun of. You know, I had multiple encounters with people trying to take pictures of my ventilator on my wheelchair as if it was a cosplay from Star Wars. So I had enough of gamers, you know, already treating me badly that I didn't really want to expose myself to the streaming world. I thought it was like, you know what? I deal with this enough in the physical world. I don't need it in my gaming too. And fortunately, I had some friends who very much, you know, pushed me into saying, if you do this, you're gonna be showing other people that it's something they can do too. And my friends, as friends do, they know the words to speak to you to get through your armors, and that was exactly what I needed to hear, was that this is something I can do for someone else.
That's terrific. I like that.
Yeah. So yeah. I didn't start streaming because I thought it was fun. I started it because I thought it would help others. And I don't know, Cherry, was that your experience too?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, in the pre-show, I was talking about, well, actually, in my intro just now, I mentioned how I was live streaming my playthroughs, not live streaming, live tweeting my game,
tweeting.
Live tweeting my playthroughs. And then in the pre-show, we were talking about this, is that I was really scared to stream because, I faced a lot of harassment, not the same as Steve, but similar, like some of it for being a woman or a non-binary person, some of it for being queer, and some of it for just being disabled and talking about disability. And sometimes, like one of the ways I was targeted in 2014, which we all know why that year was so toxic. One of the reasons I was targeted was because I was celebrating accessibility wins. And it wasn't even like I was talking about like, this needs to change or like, this needs to happen. It was, one of the worst times was I posted a picture of a page in the Prima Games guide to Final Fantasy 15 dedicated to accessibility. And so I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan. I've played it since I was a kid. And I always like get the guidebooks because like RIP Prima, who we will miss forever. But that was just the thing that I like to do. And to open it up and immediately there be a page just dedicated to accessibility, even though the game itself wasn't like super accessible, but obviously even the person writing the guide, who are not associated with the developers, cared about this enough to put it in the book. And I was like, oh, wow. So I was targeted really bad for stuff like that. And people kept telling me, similar to Steve, like, you should stream, your live tweets are so funny and like they're so like entertaining. And then like my partner would randomly video me reacting to game announcements, and apparently I have a very animated face, and I just get very animated when I'm excited and react to gaming announcements and stuff. And so he would post that on Twitter, and people would be like, see, you should stream. It's like, I really don't want to stream. And then Steve started streaming, and then around the time that Steve started streaming, I went and was in the coalition who make Gears of War. Actually, I'm wearing their t-shirt right now. Oh, that's really weird. It's one of my dev shirts, but like, that's really weird. But yeah, the developers at the coalition were like, you should stream, you'd be so good at it, and people need to hear this stuff. And I was like, I guess people do need to hear this stuff, and tweeting about it isn't really as effective as like talking about it. So yeah, Steve was the person who was like, made me feel like, okay, if Steve can do it, I can do it. And I knew Steve for quite a few years before that as well, right? Like we kind of have been in tandem the whole time. So yeah, It was really similar story. yeah, I faced harassment. Every streamer faces harassment. It sucks. But I wouldn't have changed it for the world. It's the reason I'm a games developer now. I fully believe that streaming contributed to my ability to like be a speaker, talk at conferences, be able to do my job. Like a lot of my job is about communicating with people. And so I really think streaming gave me a lot of tools.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing that you guys went into it more for like an altruistic purpose, more than just like, I just want to stream and be the next ninja. You know what I mean? Like, so you started streaming and your motivation was more for advocacy, but what was your experience like? You know, did you experience a lot of harassment? You know, did you end up loving it? Like what has it been like for you to stream?
And how has that changed over time?
Yeah.
Well, I think the funny thing that I've experienced, I won't speak for Cherry, but I guess they'll agree, is people will say to us, "Oh, yeah, you know, I'm up on accessibility. You know, Steve, right?" And it's and they'll say, "Oh, you know, Sherry, right?" And it's like both of us will have these conversations and sort of be like, "It's so annoying because it's like, no, of course we don't know them because they happen to be a disabled person streaming, but also yes, we've been friends for years, but that's beside the point. How dare you?"
I don't know every disabled person in streaming.
Right?
Damn it, I do.
Yeah. Son of a. So yeah. But it's interesting to me because I have received harassment. I'm gonna guess. I'm not even gonna guess. I know for a fact Cherry has received more of the blunt end of the stick than I have. It's not fun. Mine is sort of like I like to educate trolls. I try really hard to turn them around. It takes spoons to do it, but I really like to try that redemption arc. I really try to bring them around. I try. So my favorite one. This is gonna be a weird transition because I'll tell a funny joke and then Cherry's gonna tell something that really makes you mad. But so my favorite troll ever was in my community. We call him the bread guy, and the bread guy's story is great. I'll keep it short, but essentially, a guy came into my chat and started asking me why I was streaming because his money pays my social security. So how dare I be playing video games when I should be off being disabled? And
Obviously.
Like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
just go be disabled somewhere else. And he tipped $3, and then my mods banned him. And then he came back with the same name with the number 2 after his name, and another $3, and said, "No, seriously, how dare you? I pay my taxes pay for your money. Just go off and eat your candy bars or whatever, and be disabled somewhere else." And like on the 4th time this guy got banned and came back, continuing to tip me, by the way, every time. At this point, I've earned like $24 from him.
This is the money-making racket right here.
Money making. On the 4th time, he's like, "If I ever see you on public, I'm going to see you at a convention. I'm going to throw a loaf of bread at your face." And I just lost my mind, started laughing as hard as I've ever laughed on stream. And my community, thank goodness, they know my personality. I was like, "Really? You're gonna? What kind of bread? Is it gonna be sourdough? Is it gonna be?" And my community is like, "Is it gonna be toasted? Are you gonna bring a toaster with you? Is it gonna be French bread? Is it gonna be buttered? I really like cheese. Can it be a grilled cheese?" Oh, this guy got so mad. He came back and tipped like $20 on the last time and was like, "I swear to God, this bread is gonna hurt. It's gonna suck. You're gonna be so angry." And at this point, I am just dying laughing about it. And I am like, "Are you gonna have like a sling? Is there like some kind of quiver for your bread? You're gonna be running around with a French toast?"
That's just like...
Yeah, just like in case you see me at a random PAX, you're just gonna Nerf gun some bread at my face. Like, what are you? It was the funniest troll because I can laugh about it now, but I was just like, what? What a person to come into a chat and tell me to go be disabled or I'm gonna throw bread at you. All right, cool, dude.
I don't understand why he kept giving you money.
Right? Complaining about how money, and yet.
Yeah. Well, listen, I made like $36 off that bread guy, and just got a story out of it. So.
Plus, also apparently he's paying your social security personally.
Yes.
Yeah.
That guy. Yes.
And you'll get a bread-centric meal out of it at TwitchCon, I guess.
No cheese, though. Can't make a grilled cheese. I'm super sad about that. I hope Twitch will cover my cheese. I don't know.
So first of all, how dare he tell you to go eat candy bars? Like, that's all we do.
Yep.
But like...
Right?
I did eat a candy bar right before this, but how dare? Yeah, damn. Yeah, when I started streaming, it was like I was so afraid of it that I literally just streamed from my PS4. Just how you can just like straight stream to Twitch from your PS4. I literally just did that just to test the waters, just with like the most chill game I could, which was I was playing through Telltale games at the time, which like I like all games. Like I'm one of those weird people that likes every genre. Like I'll play everything from a Souls-like to like a narrative game. And but for me, it depends on my disabilities and how physically capable I am of playing harder games. So at the time I started streaming, that year I'd been in and out of hospital. I'd had like heart surgery. I'd had like really severe anemia where I needed a blood transfusion. I'd like bled out, like all these like really unreal things that like only disabled people can talk about, and other disabled people like, yeah, so normal year. But like everyone else is just like, you what? In that year, I had an organ infection in my liver and like my pelvic organs. It was a year. So like I got topped up on iron and like my anemia went away, and immediately I felt like I had so much energy. I was like, I'm going to start streaming. This is it. I'm going to do it. So I started through my PS4 and I loved it so much. I didn't think I'd like it. I really honestly thought I'd hate it. But I was like, I'll just try it like on my PS4 and see how it goes. And like, because people had always said like, we'll watch you, whatever. Because I've always had like a fairly significant following on Twitter, and you never believe people. Like I used to be an artist and people would always be like, I'll buy your prints. And they like maybe 5% of people will buy your prints.
Right.
Yeah. So I always thought it was going to be like that. But no, everyone freaking showed up to my chat. Like, and immediately everyone was like, how did you go to be a brand new streamer and have like 20 people in your chat? I was like, I was on Twitter first. Like, I don't know how to fix that problem for a lot of people, but I was very lucky in that respect. And they were very supportive. And so 2 weeks later, I built my PC for my birthday. And I was like, first PC I'd built in like 10 years. And streaming for me has had a lot of ups and downs. I really loved it at first. I burned out a lot. I came back, and like it's been like a lot of mountains and valleys, and I will always love it, but like it's also a really hard industry, and it's really unfriendly to disabled people, and I want to say it's a toxic industry, but it's not a healthy industry. And it physically and emotionally and cognitively, it's just exhausting to stream and to try and compete in the streaming world as a streamer. So it's been a lot of ups and downs, but I will always love it. And I love the communities, and like I love Hunter's community and Loco's community. And like I'm not an active person, I've always been a lurker. So I like lurk in like everyone's communities, but no one knows.
1 second, guys. We have technical difficulties here. Zoom has decided to stop working completely.
Oh. I saw you. You were frozen for a second.
Yeah, everyone froze, and now
I can see everybody else, but you were frozen. You were frosty.
Really? You guys all just froze for me, and now you're all blanks on my
That's not good.
I don't know I've never had this problem before, so that's interesting. Now this is a true podcast.
Because of Discord voice.
We're invisible.
Yeah, we're just a podcast now.
They can hear us. Yay! Hi everybody. We're ghosts now. It's the spooky StreamerSquare.
Yeah, that is the strangest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Tried to tell you Zoom is inaccessible.
That's true.
We're coming back.
Literally did.
We're coming back. Here we go.
That's 1. 2. Oh my gosh.
Oh, come on. Come on.
The guests.
No,
what?
It's our fault, Steve.
No.
It's our fault.
Right?
We're cursed.
Stereotypical industry trying to keep the disabled streamer down.
No.
I'm gonna take this moment to drink my coffee without my camera on. It's great.
Yeah, this is a tea sip moment if I've ever seen one.
Why is it not working?
Has it changed over time? The experiences that you had initially versus now, like an obvious one for me is the intensity and or frequency of trolling or toxicity and toxic commentary from outside, things like that? Has that gotten better or worse? Does it just have its ups and downs?
I think the entire industry, we've had some really toxic moments, like with Sekiro, especially for accessibility and disability
remember, yeah.
people.
Mm.
Disability people? Disabled people? I can't talk anymore. I don't know. Why am I here? But I think for me, on a personal level, I've weathered that because the stronger your community around you, the easier it is to deal. Because your
Definitely.
community support you and like they keep you with it. And they like, we have a mental health channel on my Discord, and I'll go there and be like, I don't know if I can do this. And everyone's like, yes, you can. And like, so it's really different. We've had some really awful moments in my streaming. Like even outside of that, we had while I was live streaming, the worst harassment we've ever had was someone, before I understood Discord's all of its security provisions, someone joined my Discord and posted a bunch of really graphic, really horrific photos while I was live. So obviously they were doing it to get me to react while I was streaming. One of my mods caught it in chat, was just like, Discord now. I went, deleted everything. We took a break and we all came together. Like that person never got what they wanted because it just made us closer. And like, that's the amazing and beautiful thing about streaming communities, is like the harassment sometimes gets worse, but your community keeps you in it.
Yeah, I guess it's community, but I mean, also just it's perseverance. It's you know, I mean, I'm personally, I'm tired. I was one of the loudest voices in the Sekiro. Like I took that on as spearhead as I could, even with other disabled advocates telling me that I'm doing it too much, and I didn't care. I took that on head on, and I brought it to the Washington Post, New York Times. I took that fight everywhere I could.
I thought that was great.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I like to think that we won. Because you know they someone developed a mod to make an easy mode, so f you Squaresoft that didn't want it. But you know what? We got our easy mode. But it takes a lot. Cherry actually hit on something we kind of glazed over. That I don't think you can have a vidcast about without really touching on it, and that is that it's a lot of work to be a streamer. We all know that. Whoever streams here knows it's a lot of work, especially off air. But if you are someone who is disabled, and I mean no disrespect to allies, if you're an ally who's not disabled, I love you. Thanks for doing what you do. But if you're actually disabled, the amount of spoons that gets taken out of your life every day just to freaking live is ridiculous. I have been very vocal in the press. I have been on camera, on national television, on Vicodin. I have been literally bleeding. I have been literally in level 10 pain. And I have asked people to go find the video and tell me which ones I was in those situations on, and no one can ever figure it out. Because we are darn good at hiding our physical ailments. And Cherry nodding.
Wow.
I guess I'm hitting some notes here with you too, Cherry. Not, like we've never talked in the same podcast before, but you know, it's a thing that I don't think a lot of people give enough. I guess enough homage to that you know, it's not something we brag about because we don't want patted on the back for it, but at the same time, like you know, it's something that does happen.
Yeah, like my community will tell you, I've dislocated like my shoulder on stream, and just like I'll pop it back in and we'll carry on and I'll keep playing, and then like an hour later I'll be like, actually I'm in a lot of pain, I really need to like finish up stream. Or like one of my my immune condition causes anaphylaxis, which is extremely painful. Not the type that you get in your throat and your mouth, but I get it in my GI system and on my skin. And so it's the most pain I ever experienced. Like, and I've experienced a lot of pain, like my joints dislocate really easily and things like this. And I've had things like heart surgery and like feeding tube surgery and like all these other things, but like these attacks are so bad that like I will pass out from the pain.
Wow.
But I've been streaming during these attacks and people cannot tell. Like I'll have to go take a break and I'll be gone. I'll be like, okay, I'm going to be a bit longer than I thought I would be, and like I stop the timer or whatever. but yeah, no one can ever tell unless I say. And I think that is something that like people that don't live with chronic pain don't necessarily know. And like that you hear it from other people that have like migraines or like fibromyalgia and stuff. Like there are definitely a lot of streamers that do that, and we need to take care of ourselves a little bit better. And that's what I mean by saying it's not a healthy industry, is that there is a lot of pressure, and like the way the capitalism drives it like is really tied into like pushing yourself and like pushing through and streaming every day for many hours a day. And if you have to take a break from streaming, you're going to lose your community. And like, which is true, like it sucks because people have their habits, and like even your most dedicated community members will find other habits and find other streamers to hang out with in their off time and things like that. And so like it is true, but that's definitely a difficult part of it. But yeah, I'm with you, Steve, that whole Sekiro thing, I was there with you, and I had similar. I had people in my DMs being like, you should like really take a break, and I'm like, no, because this is important. And like I did my article for IGN on it, and I was terrified. Like I was terrified of writing a piece for IGN on the whole Sekiro thing because it was so toxic. Like I had people, not when you're disabled, you don't have people telling you should kill yourself. You have people telling you should be dead, like that, which is really different to how like most people face harassment. We get harassment saying like, well, you should just not even be alive to begin with, which like is kind of technically true actually, because I've survived so many things that would have killed me in my late 20s, early 30s. And then that touches a nerve because that's true, but like not in the way they mean it. And so like pushing through that in order to advocate and fight that fight is exhausting to the point where, I don't know about you, Steve, but now every time Sekiro comes back up, everyone knows not to bother me. I just can't. I did it once and I'm like, I've got different fights to fight now.
Well, no, that's because you're smarter than I am. So you put up a boundary. I still keep fighting. I'm just like, well, all right. I have the sword sitting on my desk. I'm like, all right, let's go again. Like, sure, let's go. But I'm getting tired doing it for sure. Yeah. It does strike a different note. I had someone on Twitter during that say, oh man, so you can't play Sekiro because you have a neuromuscular disability. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, oh, is it progressive? And I answer back, yeah, it's taken away a lot of my abilities. My muscles are getting weaker over time, but I'm still kicking, and I'm out there playing other games I can. They're like, oh, I wish SMA would have went faster because you shouldn't be here. I was like, oh,
that's the progression of that conversation.
Yep. Yeah. Wanted to switch and bait. Like, actually made me think they were asking questions, and then switched it to a death wish. Yep. So, and unfortunately, you have to touch on the darkness. I know it makes people uncomfortable, but you have to see our side here is we see some really dark things directed our way, and people can be vicious, and it doesn't matter how hardened veteran, quote unquote, you are. It'll still dent some of your armor. Like it might not get through, but it's in the back of your brain somewhere. So.
It comes back at the weirdest times too, right? Like you'll be watching a TV show and it just like hits you and you're like, damn, I thought I was okay with that, but I guess that really bothered me.
No,
I didn't realize. Yeah.
I was talking on Twitter the other day watching Warrior Nun and how they use one of their tropes as a disabled person walking again for the first time, and that they want to kill someone because they were disabled, and it's like. And it made me flash back to the Sekiro stuff and some of the things people said. And, I found tears in my eyes watching a stupid rated C Netflix show that had nothing to do with the trauma. But it's like, oh, I took that trauma and I just shoved it into a pouch and ignored it. And so, yeah.
I haven't watched Detective Pikachu yet because I've heard about what that, like the main bad guy is, and that's the trope is that he's angry and a bad guy because he's disabled. And I was like, I'm the biggest Pokemon fan. Like Pokemon has been in my life since I was like 16 years old or something, which is a really long time for me because I'm old. It's been like 22 years or something. Anyway, as long as Pokemon's been around outside of Japan. And like, I still haven't watched that movie, even though I really wanted to, because I was like, I can't. And every time I sit down, I'm like, maybe I can do it today. I'm like, I don't think I can. And it's silly. It's just such a silly, it's a kid's movie. But like,
it's like, it's those types of like, stereotypes that get perpetuated. It's like, the bad guy is always like, like he's disabled or mangled or, you know, has like physical deformities. It's
Or
like,
these hordes
like,
of mutants, right?
what is that?
We
Yeah,
see
like
that in
what is
games
that
all the
message
time.
sending to people? Like I feel like it's like not something that you like, you know, unless it affects you, you don't even really think about it, and then it just gets ingrained in you, and then you have these kids that are just so vicious and callous towards other human beings because they've just been, you know, ingrained with how the media portrays disabled people.
That's true too.
Yeah.
It's
I do think we're winning though, like Steve said. And the reason I think that is because we see more people talking about this. It's not just like me and Steve and a few other people anymore. It's so many people. Like there's constantly people linking me to articles on Polygon and Kotaku and stuff from disabled journalists talking about these things. And I'm just like, holy crap, like they're allowed to have these, like publish these articles now about like Rage 2's disfigurement and things like this. And I'm just like, it's working. And that's why like now I've stepped back a little bit from the public because I'm not comfortable with like being publicly known. Like people coming up to me at conferences and being like, I follow you on Twitter. I'm like, yay. I don't know what to say to that. Like I'm so awkward. But so now I've been stepping back recently and I've been like, okay, it's your fight now. Here, take it. I'm tired.
Yeah, that's totally fair. You know, and while we're on the topic of games, you know, there was articles going around about The Last of Us 2 and how it was like supposed to be the most accessible game like ever. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to play it or at least heard about that. But what is your take on that? And just the broader of like, are video games getting better at addressing accessibility?
Yes. Through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears from, you know, places like Able Gamers, from amazing advocates like Cherry, from people who have been there and done that. You know, it's getting better slowly. It's coming around due to popular pressure. You know, we were privileged in a lot of ways to sort of help push that. You know, from our own experience, and you know, it came along at the right time. You know, 10 years earlier, and Cherry and I would not have had the platforms that we could have gathered to push in the way that we did. So we got kind of lucky. On the flip side, you know, it's a little hard. So the most controversial thing I'll say today is that it's impossible for me to say, and I believe, personal belief here, it's impossible for anyone to say whether a game is, quote, accessible overall or not. It is a range of accessibility, and there are websites and there are certification courses that you can take to get it more accessible. But I think if you review a game and you blanket say whether something is accessible or is not accessible, it is a falsehood. And we have to be very careful when we do reviews that it's personal experience. I can tell you that someone with SMA could play a game that I could not, and vice versa, because SMA presents itself so differently depending on what I have, what somebody else has. So it's not fair for me to sit here, you know, and say, nope, if you have SMA, you're never playing The Last of Us 2, because I know some people with SMA who have. But it's not accessible for me, even despite how many options it has. So it's not a magic bullet. It's not a magic cure. We have to stop looking at it as a binary yes or no. It's how accessible is it?
Yeah, and like that's something that I have to like struggle with in my job day to day. So like I really hate the phrase barrier free. I think there will never be a game that's barrier free, because games, I also even don't like it in IRL because there is no building that will ever be barrier free. It's just the nature of how we have to design. And so you can make things as accessible as possible, but one of the most semi-controversial things I said was on another podcast was like, I think another friend of ours called Steve, he asked me like, do you think there will ever be a game that's 100% accessible? And I was like, nope. And that's controversial for a developer to say that works in accessibility. And I don't think that the end goal is to find or make a game that will be 100% accessible. For me, working in AAA, and the reason I took a job in AAA is because I think the ultimate goal is to make as many big games as possible, as accessible as possible, so people have choice. So disabled people have as much choice as a non-disabled person in what games they play and what genres they play. Like The Last of Us Part 2, I did play it. It's a very traumatic game to play. It's a hard game to play. it's I didn't stream it because I was like, you know what, I'm gonna actually go through this on myself because I'm not in the right headspace to actually experience this on stream, and I know I'm gonna get mad at someone because it's gonna put me in that space where I'm uncomfortable and I'm unhappy because I know that's what the game does. And so I took it for myself and I enjoyed it myself, which is rare over the last few years. But it was actually very therapeutic for me in its trauma because I was going through the whole like harassment being discussed in the industry and stuff at the time. And I, as an abuse survivor, it was very therapeutic for me to play a game like The Last of Us Part 2. And it was largely accessible to me, but there were definitely, even though my disabilities are not as profound as Steve's, mine are profound for the type of disability I have. So Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, there are many different expressions like SMA, like all genetic disorders are like that, where it's a spectrum and everyone presents differently. And so my presentation of EDS is pretty profound compared to most people with EDS. But at the same time, there are things that people with EDS can do that I can't, and vice versa. And so there were ways that it was like weirdly inaccessible to me, but not enough that I had to stop playing. It was just that like it often like limits how long I can play or how much pain I will be in after I've been playing. But yeah, so for me, that's the end goal, is as many big games as possible, as accessible as possible. And games are barriers. Like, they challenge people. They're meant to challenge people. They're meant to be an interaction experience. And you can't really do that by not having barriers. And so, like, and people like to say, like, well, then it would be a novel, but like novels have barriers. So someone with dyslexia, let me tell you, like, you know, like, yeah.
There's not a checklist. There's not a guideline checklist that will work for all games to be accessible. It is a mindset. You absolutely have to change your mindset to be as accessibility prone as you can be. You can make things better, but there will be no video game that is absolutely accessible to every single person with every single disability at the same time, and that the populace loves, and it's Fortnite 2.3, and it's just never gonna happen.
Yeah.
And
Fortnite is not accessible to me,
right.
And also, it's not my kind of game.
Exactly. So even if we made it made Fortnite as accessible to Cherry as possible, Cherry still wouldn't necessarily like it, and that's what we have to. That's what we have to understand as a community. This is. It's like streaming, right? Gaming and streaming and advocacy, it all has one thing in common, and that is that it's not this bowl of cherries that everybody wants to think. You know, there is one cherry, and only one, the one that we're talking to right now. Right? It's not. There's, you know, so let's go with the example of Cheerios, right? Some people think that life is about Cheerios, and if I take a little bit of Cheerios from you, you have less Cheerios, I have more Cheerios, but there's only this finite amount of Cheerios. That's not the way the world works, okay? Cherry has gone on to be a developer now, a bona fide Ubisoft developer, and helping them make the world a better place through their games. Still being a little bit of an advocate, still being a little bit of a streamer, main focus, being an awesome developer. My focus right now is in Able Gamers, helping push Able Gamers, secondarily being a streamer and getting a higher profile so that people can see that people like us exist. That is my primary focus right now, is to attain the biggest platform I can so that someone who's coming after me will have a trail to walk, because there was nowhere for me to follow, no example to go with. I had to make it up on my own. So I want someone else to see how I did it so they can follow my wheelchair tracks up the mountain and then and be the next advocate, because I'm not going to be around forever. I have 2 terminal illnesses and I have life, so technically 3. So one of them's going to get me eventually. So you know, I want the next person to do better. But because Cherry went to be a developer doesn't mean that advocacy stops. Because I'm pushing Able Gamers doesn't mean that being a famous Twitch streamer with disability stops. Like, there are other people. And there are other people who need to come up with us and stand with us or sit beside us to do what we do. We can't do it alone. As awesome as Able Gamers is, as Cherry is, as, you know, I'm okay, I guess. You know, as much as those frontline people are, you know, we need people with us. And I think sometimes what I feel a pressure for Cherry and I is that you feel that pressure to always stay up at the tip of the spear. and it's exhausting. It's just exhausting, and I hope that our culture realizes soon that it's not, we're not monoliths. We're not we're not the demigods of this accessibility. We're just a couple of people who care a lot.
Yeah, that's where my goal is right now, is like, aside from my day job and development, I mean, but in tandem with that, because like I can affect change in those areas now, is like, I really want, especially streaming and content creation and gaming in general, to be a space where disabled people can be, and they don't have to be advocates. Like, they don't have to be fighting the fight for accessibility if they don't want to. Like, they should just be able to be successful streamers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they should just be able to have fun and be a streamer and have the same goals as a non-disabled streamer. Like, it's the same for women. Like, women shouldn't have to fight to be like a female streamer. Like, they should just get to be a streamer, right? Like, you shouldn't have to fight that fight. And that's really where my passion lies right now, and where I really want the industry to get towards. And so, like, behind the scenes, I've been working towards that for quite a while now, and in my new role, trying to achieve that as much as possible, where like inviting like disabled influencers or content creators to like preview games doesn't mean that we expect them to review accessibility. It means we want them to play the game. Like, and I think that's where that's the ultimate goal for me, is to make it a more inclusive industry. That means we don't have to be advocates, because not everyone should have to be just because they're disabled.
We're three-dimensional. We have more interests. I'm gonna spill Loco's tea here when she messaged me and said, "Hey, like, let's do this accessibility thing again. But also, what else do you want to talk about? Because we should talk about non-accessibility." And that actually meant so much to me, and pushed her up the friendship mountain with me, because she recognized it wasn't just about accessibility. I get tired of, I'll be honest, friends, I'll let you know, all the viewers you've got know that I was asked to do 5 panels at virtual PAX this year. I turned them all down because they all talked about accessibility. I don't want to do it. Now, that's not to say, if you're listening from a top-end podcast like StreamerSquare, you shouldn't invite me to accessibility. I will probably do it. I still do the ones with 2 viewers. I do the ones with 1,000 viewers or 100,000. I don't care. If I feel like it, I'll do it. But sometimes I just want to talk about a video game, or like profound things. Hunter and I, if you saw our DMs, it's like deep philosophical crap. It is never about accessibility. It's like you're more than just accessibility. You have a personality, and just because I'm disabled doesn't mean that I don't have dreams, hopes, and aspirations and fears that I'd love to talk about. And it doesn't mean that those fears, dreams, and aspirations wouldn't be valid for someone else to learn from too.
Yeah, I actually gave a talk at a conference last year about that, and it was like really honest, and I was able to do it because it wasn't being recorded. And I was like, okay, so screw this. I am just gonna go ahead and be really honest about how I'm tired. I just want to be I just want to be a game designer. Like, just let me be a game designer. But like, there's still that fight to be fought. And so like I'm tired of being invited on panels for diversity. Like, I want to talk about the technical aspect. I'm a technical games developer. I work with technical design problems every day, solving these problems, and that's what I want to talk about. But yeah, we're still at the point where we're not quite there. And so yeah, one day.
Don't even get me started on the diversity ones. If I get one more invite to a panel where it's me and 3 other straight white cis het dudes, and I'm just like, you realize I'm a white straight cis het dude, right? And I'm just disabled. That's the only difference. I use a wheelchair, you don't. That's the only reason I'm different. And I am different because of that. You can invite me, but you should, I don't know, invite some people of color, a black person, preferably black woman. How about that? Start there.
Yep.
Like, this is not diversity to put one person in a wheelchair that looks just like you. That's not.
Yep.
Please get better.
Me and Greg actually were on a panel at PAX a couple years ago, Greg from Able Gamers, and we were both we were chatting with the other panelists, and then it just hit me, and I turned around and went, I think we were on stage at the time, which whoops, but I was like, Greg, we're the tokens. And it was like funny, but also it wasn't. Like everyone laughed, but then everyone afterwards was like, should we have laughed? Greg does rule. Kumo. Yeah, sorry. Distracted by chat.
So, we're here talking about streaming. We've got a lot of people that stream on Twitch. They're getting into streaming. How can we be better towards accessibility? Just and for everyone here that has that power to be more accessible. How can we do that?
You don't have closed captions even on the stream.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean that's if you want us to be honest, then as my friends, I have to be honest about criticism. You don't have closed captioning, and that's it's a low bar to hit, and it's easy to do. Now I will say openly, because everyone knows I will be happy to take on Twitch, which is probably why I'm not an ambassador. Twitch does a horrible crapping job of accessibility. They make us choose between accessibility and content. For example, as all streamers know, you have one overlay panel that you can use on your stream, and you can choose between content or closed captioning. That's your choice. Would you like content for your community, or would you like to be accessible? Well, I chose to lose some content that was getting me bits. I had a literal thing that was putting up our panels that show competitors. As every streamer knows, if you put up those damn panels that show, haha, I'm 100 this week, haha, no, I got 200, it inspires people to give bits. I had to take that down because I care more about accessibility. So I literally hurt my own stream for accessibility. And there are hundreds of us who do the same thing. We shouldn't have to choose, and Twitch could do better. They choose not to.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. So for those that are wondering, there are extensions that I think pretty much everyone can access, and there are a couple of closed captioning extensions. Yep. I use them on my personal stream. The reason we don't have them here yet is because we don't have one person doing our production. So when that is sorted, that is actually at the top of our list. But so that is one super easy thing that that anyone can do if you stream on Twitch. There is a closed captioning extension. It literally just involves opening a browser when you stream. Super, super easy. There's also an OBS plugin.
Mic and does the thing. So it's got to be on if you use two PCs, it's got to be on the PC that hears the microphone. Mm-hmm. The one I use is Stream Closed Captioner.
Yeah, that's the one I recommend because it has the most options for users. So like for viewers, they can customize it the most, and I think it's the most accurate.
Also has translation.
Yeah, and it also has translation. Yes. And as someone who has a weird accent, and also my speech gets slurred as my disabilities progress throughout the stream, like the accuracy is really important to me, and that one is by far the most accurate. But I do recognize that, like Steve said, that it's a choice that streamers often have to make, which sucks. And I don't think the choice should be forced upon streamers like that. And that actually is how we end up with accessibility not being done, is because you push people into that difficult space. And then the other thing is, like, it is difficult when you've got more than one person speaking, because none of these solutions actually work to differentiate who's speaking. And that makes it difficult for those captions to actually work for viewers. Like, they have to do a lot of paying attention to figure out who's saying what. So these solutions really need to go much further. Now, I think the broadcasting software needs to do better. I think OBS, I think Streamlabs, I think XSplit all needs to do better. XSplit have been saying, I've been an XSplit subscriber for years now, and they've been saying to me for years, we're working on it. And there's still no sign of it. And so if it was in our streaming software, it would be much easier for, first of all, streamers to implement it. And second of all, it would mean that it could be maybe on the VODs, because it would be sent through the technical broadcasting caption, and which is actually a really technically complex thing. And that's why people don't use it, even though it is there. You need to basically be a professional broadcaster from TV to understand how this technology works. So there's a few barriers there that I do want to recognize for people, but outside of captioning, I think for me, one of the things that I want to see in terms of accessibility is having our industry get healthier. And I think both Loco and Hunter, both of you do a really good job of this, of promoting wellness and promoting taking breaks and promoting not streaming every day, all hours of the day, and taking time off when you need to, and being vocal about that. Because doing it on your own is one thing, but if all streamers came together and was no, it's not acceptable that you all treat us like content machines. If everyone came together and said that, then maybe we'd have healthier chats. Maybe we'd have healthier fans and viewers that understand that we're people, and that some of us have extremely limited fountains of energy, or like we have illnesses that come and go, or like streaming can literally cause a flare up for some people. Like, and it has for me, especially if I don't sleep well and then I also stream, like then I will get sick while I'm on stream, or I'll be in more pain than usual. And so like those are the things that I would really like to see, is just like collectively. And I think that it's hard to do that one-on-one, but I think the more people that are less afraid to do that, the better it is for everyone. And yeah, then just inviting people to be parts of like tabletop shows or podcasts or shows like this, where they don't have to talk about their disability, they're just part of the show, like things like that. Or like co-streams, things like that. Like you see a lot, like you do see some co-streams, but there's very little overlap of communities for disabled content creators. And that can partly be because like disabled content creators' schedules are more limited, or they're just like not as well known. Like the less like an able-bodied white dude you look like or you sound like, the harder it is to be successful in streaming. I think we all know that here. And like, I think what I love about the stream scene is you're not afraid to say that and talk about that. And like, that's true for disabled people, especially if you're visibly disabled, or like right now, for example, like a lot of people wouldn't think I'm disabled, but the longer my streams go on, the more apparent my disabilities become, the more I slur my speech or I stutter, or sometimes I have breathing problems, like things like this, or my shoulder dislocates, which is always a nice sound to have on stream.
Oh no, does it get picked up on the mic? Wow.
Yeah, or like my spine or my vertebrae like basically dislocate. So you know how like people will go to the massage therapist and have their back popped or whatever? Mine just does that if I reach for something. So like really loudly. So I'll like be like, oh, someone asks me about something on one of my shelves, and I'll turn around and reach for it, and people will be like, was that your
back
body?
is aimed at the microphone as you're turning around, and then you have
and people are like, I'm gonna vomit. I'm like, I'm really sorry.
Yeah, I think that a conversation like this is not done justice if we don't talk about unconscious bias. It is a problem that is not going to be solved on one talk show. Is a cultural shift that we must see. I do think that appearances like this and leaders like Loco and Hunter pushing help. I do think that together we can begin to confront these unconscious bias. But for those of you who may not understand what I'm talking about here, unconscious bias is the psychological phenomenon that's active in your head right now that you may not realize that you don't quite value a person of color as high as you do someone who is white. Or it's someone, or maybe a woman as much as a man, maybe non-binary people, maybe trans people. You discount their view just a little bit. Or maybe you turn out on their stream just a little bit faster than you would somebody else's. Maybe instead of inviting somebody that has really a lot of knowledge about, Breath of the Wild, who's disabled, maybe your friend who's completely able-bodied and has no disabilities visible, maybe that one's the one that gets the invite. And it's that you're not particularly trying to be ableist or a bad person, but the filters in your mind that go through their Rolodex of people, because what people don't get is, in all of us, there's a Rolodex in our head. Every person we've ever met, how much we like them, how, close we are to them, how much we think they're a good content mix or fit, depending on how you look at it, and who you call upon for those slots. And unconsciously, we have biases, and we need to confront that. I think if looking at people like me and Cherry, you see us, I don't think a week goes by that Cherry and I don't get an invite to some named thing every week. And it's great. And we do it to stay visible, to keep burning the trail, like we talked about earlier. But the thing is, you don't see us on the front page of Twitch. You don't see us in the hero spot. Even when we get front page, we don't get hero spot. Even when we're, in a magazine, it's not the cover. Even when you're on in the New York Times, it's not the front page, it's the back pages. And now I realize there's a succession, and we have to fight our way forward. And I get that, and we're doing that fight, and other people are coming behind us to help that fight as well. But I think there's something to be said for there shouldn't have to be national movements for those people to suddenly get those spots.
Mhm.
It should be something that we all just take into consideration and maybe diversify the cast of people that we have in our lives a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think we should also think about, like, if you want to do a co-stream with someone who's disabled, don't be afraid to talk to them about that and what that will entail and like what that means for them and what games they can play and how you might be able to support them. So like we now have like a lot more disabled content creators on Twitch because Mixer sadly closed down. And Mixer was much more accessible than Twitch. It was naturally more accessible. Like the UI was more accessible for a lot of people. It wasn't for me cognitively, but like that's my accessibility needs are really different to a lot of like accessibility needs for people with visual disabilities or who are totally sightless. And so for that community, Mixer was much more accessible. Mixer also did a lot of work to make sure that like disabled content creators were partnered or put on the front page. And even if they didn't reach the same kind of numbers as like a typical like able-bodied white guy would, because it's important to recognize that like in creative programs in development, we try to recognize that you can't do diversity in creative programs if you don't also recognize how the numbers don't make sense for everyone, right?
It's like an equity issue more than equality.
Exactly. And so like you have to be kind of aware of that. But so now we have more disabled content creators than ever on Twitch, like especially blind and sightless content creators. Like one of the cool things you can do is like co-stream where you play on an Xbox with Copilot or something where you're assisting the person that you're playing with or they're assisting you. And it kind of like is a joint like effort. So there's like a lot of different ways of playing games that I think typically we don't think about, like beyond like normal co-op or couch co-op or so quickly for anyone that doesn't know what Copilot is a feature on the Xbox that allows you to basically share a controller with someone else. So you both have your own controller and you can both control the same character in like a single player game. Or the UI or whatever, do the same controls. And that's partly how the Xbox adaptive controller works so well for a lot of people, is being able to use it alongside a typical controller.
Cool.
So yeah, so there's like little things you can do like that where you can just like, don't be afraid to talk about disability and like, don't be afraid to make mistakes, because that's the thing is we will make mistakes, but as long as you're open to like, okay, I used the wrong term there, but I got told that, don't take it personally. Just be like, okay, I should learn and remember not to like, call a deaf person hearing impaired because they find that insulting. So like you don't do that and you just learn and you move on from that, right? And so I think it's complex. Disability is really complicated, and that's the thing is like language is really complicated. We don't all refer to each other by the same things or to ourselves. So it's just about not being afraid to have those conversations, I think, is something the community can do more.
Definitely. A few of the minor adjustments that I make as a streamer is things like going into the accessibility options in a game and changing a few things in order to without making anything, without removing too much from my experience and the presentation of the experience. Modifications like some games have provide a background for subtitles to make them easier to read. Sometimes I'll turn that on depending on whether or not the game seems to need that. Color blindness, like outlines of enemies that you can see through a wall when you're looking with your magic eyes or whatever. Oftentimes they're red, right? Or there'll be a red reticle. But a lot of people can't see that at all. So I'll go in and I'll change some of those things to make it an easier and better experience for people who are watching the stream, even though I don't need it for myself.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things like that, like even motion sickness. We get a lot of people in chat with motion sickness, and there are settings you can change. I have really strong opinions about accessibility menus, but we don't have time for that.
That'll be part 3.
But really quickly, like some companies will have accessibility menus, some companies won't. It doesn't always have to be under an accessibility menu for it to be accessibility. And in fact, I really want the industry to move to a place where like all settings are accessibility. It's not just some settings, and we shouldn't segregate accessibility as different or extra.
That's interesting. I like that. I like that.
Yeah. So we'll see that more as like it becomes more standardized, because like if you start putting everything in accessibility, it's just going to get unwieldy and you can't like really navigate it properly.
People start ignoring the whole like section at that point, right?
Yeah.
Like kind of
There's also like the conceptualization thing too, right? It's like, hey, you disabled person, pay attention to this part of the menu instead of, hey, are these things you need?
Right.
I know.
Human being who needs things.
Right. And not everyone thinks that they're disabled or sees themselves as disabled or knows that they need that. Like, it comes up on Twitter all the time. I get so many people being like, oh, I couldn't find this setting, or like, this game doesn't have invert controls, or this game doesn't have field of view, but actually it's under accessibility now. And they're like, what? Why would I ever look there? So there's like many different reasons. But yeah, so just check in with your chat and like ask your chat, like, anyone have motion sickness? What helps you with that? Like, can I turn screen shake off? Can I like, because that won't really affect your experience of the game if you're streaming it, but it might actually have a big impact on someone in your chat, and they'll be able to watch you actually play. So yeah, checking in on like unusual things like that can really help. Or like being aware of like, I can't watch people play mouse and keyboard games very often because the way people use mouse, like it's different when it's a competitive game, like do what you need to do. But if you're just playing a single player like story game and you're using mouse and keyboard, be careful that you're just not like shooting the camera around, like try and move your camera more smoothly, like as you're playing the game, because you're broadcasting, you're like presenting this to people. And so you should be thinking about how your chat is viewing that. So like
instead
even when
like a 720 in 0.3
seconds. Or like looking up and down really quickly or whatever, like and I even do it with a controller. I have to use the controller, I can't use mouse, but I will make sure I don't like snap my sticks, or like when I'm looking around, I'll like try and make it cinematic like a movie, because I'm thinking, okay, someone's watching this and I don't want them to feel sick. So it's like little things.
Show off your options. One of the things I try to do is if I'm playing a new game, I will put up the options menu on the screen and I will scroll through and point at each of the options, and then I'll have my mods go through and clip it. And then if anybody comes to the channel and asks, what kind of things does this game offer, then they can hit a command and it shows the options menu directly, so that people can see, are the options. For example, in order to play a game, I need mouse sensitivity to be very high. So the only thing I care about, for a personal reference, is how high can the mouse sensitivity go. So the very first thing I'll do is I'll go into a streamer's chat, if I haven't been able to see the game myself, and I'll say, hey, can I see the options menu real quick? And most of them, if they're friends, will be happy to do that. But, not everybody even thinks about doing that. So if you have it ahead of time, then, you'll be able to be ahead and have those ready to go. And another thing people can do is just normalize talking about it. Play with some options on. Play with some different options than you might normally use, and show people exactly that it's a normal experience, quote unquote. As much as I hate the term normal, bring it to culture and say, hey, I like playing a game where I don't have to be super hard mode. Maybe I like it where the enemies are not able to grab me. Maybe that's cool.
Yeah, I think it's also like really similar to like, I find it really uncomfortable when I go into a new stream and it's really taboo to talk about like being in pain or having a headache or like having a bad day. Like, I think that all of us here are very welcoming to our communities and allow our communities to vent if they need to, or talk through their problems if they need to, within reason, obviously. Like, we don't want to like trigger people in chat. Like, we don't want people to come in and talk about really sensitive topics. I have a Discord channel specifically for that. So if people do come in and they're like, I'm in a bit of a crisis, we can be like, okay, come to this channel and talk about it here, where people can opt in or out.
Yeah.
But like allowing people to talk, like, like, oh, I've had a really hard week because like I'm having a fibromyalgia flare up, or like I'm sick, or I've been in the hospital, like allowing people to talk about these things. I think we're getting better at that with COVID, sadly, but I think that, I think that not making that taboo, not making it an off limits topic, because like positivity only. I like to think about like positive realism rather than like positivity, right? Like, you can be realistic but positive in how you talk about it, and you can support each other.
Yeah, I actually think with the pandemic and with, what happened last month with Black Lives Matter and the Twitch sexual harassment, Me Too movement, I think all of that has really kind of changed the tide for streaming and made, these types of topics, just being able to talk about real world issues on your stream, which I think has just been, it's been taboo for so long. Like, you're absolutely right. Like, it's just been something where, you know, just good vibes, like let's be in our bubble. And you know, I think these conversations that have been happening have they've been super progressive to, you know, change the tide in a lot of ways. And it's good to see that's changing with streamers, a lot of streamers, including myself, being more open to talking about tougher, realer topics.
Yeah, I think it's a part of how we're going to get more healthy and like be more realistic about what hours we can keep and when we can stream and like keep into those schedules and things. Because that's the other thing is like we have a lot of disabled people in my community because we kind of congregate because it's hard to find support. If you're in a community that seems very able-bodied, it could be hard to have those conversations. So my community ended up very quickly like very much focused on disability and queerness and like all my other identities. But yeah, so we get a lot of people that are new to streaming and want to start streaming and want to be able to do streaming, but they're worried about managing their disabilities or having these conversations or like being able to like compete in the industry or like be successful. And that's one of the things that we talk about quite a lot is like, don't be afraid to tell people I'm in pain right now. Like that sucks. Like, don't be afraid to tell people that, like, and talk about that. And I was at first when I started streaming, I didn't talk about my pain. Like I've been like that my whole life, but it carried on into my streaming. And then what I realized when I started talking about this, it's kind of powerful in a way to be able to break down those barriers and like show other people that they can be vulnerable and they can talk about these things.
And there's an ownership there too.
It's a bit of internalized ableism is the problem. Is
Sure.
There's for people like us who are profoundly disabled, it's part of our everyday lives that we've been trained to minimize that portion of ourselves for as long as we can remember. You know, I mean, you know, in the dating world, you try to put as little of your disability in your profile as possible because you want to be as attractive as you can to everyone else, and you know, it's unfortunate, but it's part of who, you know, society has trained us to be. And you know, I found that personally, being transparent has helped me retain my audience. I like to believe that I have the platform that I've built because I'm pretty vulnerable and open about it. I think that I've seen enough people who try to be fake in that they're not really disabled or that it, you know, they're trying to hide it and just be a performer. It gets a little sticky. It's sort of like, you know, well, I'm disabled, yeah, but let's not talk about that. Let's look over here. People don't really respect that as much as if you'll just be like, yeah, I'm disabled. Here's what I deal with. Anyway, on about this game. You know, you don't have to make it your main focus, but also it is part of who you are. You know, as much as talking about Sherry's blue hair or Luca's purple shirt. Like it's, you know, it's just a thing that's part of who you are, your environment, who you are. So I found that transparency was great, and whenever anybody comes into my streams asking, you know, oh, how do I get to where you are, Steven? Like, first of all, I'm nowhere, so I don't know why you want to be here, but like I don't have 3,000 people watching me right now. But two, like, you know, be who you are, because the problem with being a fake version of yourself is that we're forgetful as a species, and we're gonna forget the things that we've said before, and then your facade's gonna crack, and people are gonna start distrusting you and wondering about everything you say. It's much better to just be yourself because it's easy to remember who you really are. So if you need a day off for pain, set that boundary. Say, listen, guys, gals, non-binary pals, this is the problem today. I can't do it. I am having a rough medical day. You don't have to be specific if you're not comfortable. I don't be like, well, this tube came out over here and I had to get resurgically inserted. And
I can't be specific. It's too gross. There is
Right?
a line
Yeah.
where you just
there's a line.
probably don't need to talk about that.
Exactly. You don't need pictures and medical proof, and I don't need a doctor's note. But at the same time, I can, you know, say, hey, it's been a medical day, everybody. Hope you understand. Even I've gone to the point where my channel's been down 40-50% because it was a hard month. I could not get the medical stuff under control. And I just make sure to keep in contact on Discord. Hey, everybody, still alive, still with you. Unfortunately, can't do it right now. I'm trying. And when you come back, the numbers won't instantly bounce back, but they do bounce back. People begin to see that you're reliably streaming again. You're there for them, and they will return. So have a little faith in your community, and they'll have some faith in you.
Or maybe you'll find new people. And like that's also why I try to tell people that are new to streaming or want to stream and they have disabilities or chronic illness or anything to set your sights on a different goal to what everyone else does, because you cannot measure up to an able-bodied person. You just can't. Or like, even if you're neurodivergent, if you're autistic or you have ADHD, you have less spoons than someone who isn't in that position. And so like, you really have to set your own goals. I ended up in a trap in the middle of my streaming. I don't want to call it a career because it's not my job anymore, but like in the middle of my streaming run, I ended up in this trap where I started out with like, I'm not going to care about the numbers. I'm not in it for that. I want to educate people. I want to share my game playthroughs with people. I want company. I was very isolated at the time because I was in hospital so much. And then I'd got out of hospital and I'd lost all my friends because that's reality. Unfortunately, friends don't always bounce back like streaming communities do. But so like, that's why I started streaming. I was like, and I found that friendship. I'm going to get emotional, but it was very special to me. And then I started to see a little bit of success and I got in my own head and I was like, numbers, then my average viewers matter. I really wanted partnership. I never made it to partner. That was a really hard thing for me to accept because I saw my friends making it to partner and I could never get that. It didn't matter how successful I was, didn't matter how many panels I was on, didn't matter how much I streamed, didn't matter how many like big tabletop games I was on or like how much I extended myself. I couldn't get to that 75 average viewers just for some reason. And not everyone can. And like, I think that is where you kind of have to realize like, okay, maybe that isn't my goal. Maybe that shouldn't be my goal. Affiliate gets me so much anyway. So like, what's the big difference there? And reassess what that is. And don't follow your numbers too much because I think that's part of how our industry is unhealthy is the numbers. And the focus on the numbers and the obsession with the numbers. And I got in my head and I did that. And that was probably my lowest point with streaming was like, I was beating myself up mentally about how I wasn't good enough. And like, I wasn't entertaining. I wasn't good to hang out with. Like I started talking bad about myself. Like, so I'm getting emotional, but.
I wish we'd have a better conversation about the true meaning of success. This is going a bit philosophical here, and Loco's gonna grab me and yank me off the screen here for running over at this point. But yeah, Hunter and I and Cherry probably could wax about this poetically for years. But listen, success as a concept is fleeting, number one, and it morphs almost constantly. And I really want to do one of my videos about philosophy about success at one point, because here's the problem, friends. You can work your entire life to get up on that stage, and I've been there. And you've been in the backstage or in the green room. There's stars around you. You're like, this is awesome, and you're like so cool, and it's amazing. And you get on stage, and there's bright lights, and people are waiting for you to talk, and you do your speech, and you nail it. You're like, yes, I did it. And you get off the stage, and you're like, crap, what do I do now? It doesn't last. People think that once you check that off, you are going to be happy and you're successful. And you've got, nope, it never ends. It's a treadmill. You get the purple check mark. I was happy about my purple check mark for a day or two, and then I was like, all right, cool. Like, it's
just lasted a whole day or two?
No, well, I mean, I also got a candy bar that day, so.
All right.
What, not every day? I mean, that's.
Well, lacking too much bread in my life. So the problem is we don't target success properly. So what do you want? Do you want Loco's numbers? Do you want Hunter's level of support? Do you want my number of Twitter followers? Do you want Cherry's status as a real bona fide developer? What is success to you? What one of us are you closely trying to model about? You know, so what? So Loco does better numbers than me. I have more numbers than her on Twitter. Who cares? Either way. So Hunter can talk better than I care. Who cares? Poor Loco. Loco's community numbers make mine look like child's play. I mean, you know, Cherry is a now actual developer in an actual community that I look up to. Like, you know, these are, you can't be everything.
Yeah.
So what's your definition of success? Start zeroing in on what you feel is success and go for that, and ignore what the heck anyone else says is success. And if they tell you you're not successful, tell them to go eat a piece of bread.
Yeah. And look back. Like, that's the last thing I would want to say is, like, look back at your success, because that's where you'll find success. It's not
Yes.
forwards, it's behind you. And I realized this actually just yesterday. So huge personal revelation at age 38. I was doing my latest slide deck for GDC, which I'm giving another talk again this year, which, like, that was one of my measures of success. The first time I gave a talk at GDC was like, holy crap, I've made it as a developer. There it is, I've done it. And then I'm like, well, now I need a full-time job because I'm tired of being a consultant. So then there's always something else. So look back. And yesterday, like, on one of my slides, I'm tired of, like, listing off who I've worked for at the beginning of my talk. So instead, I just put, like, a bunch of logos of all the games I've worked on. And I looked at that and I was like, oh, that's a lot of AAA games. And that's just from last year. And I was like, huh, why have I never done that before? Like, and that's just look back at what you've accomplished, because it's behind you. It's not ahead of you. That's it.
No, I just don't want to. I don't want this to end. But
we can talk about philosophy for like the next 6 hours. Are we allowed to go for 9 hours on Patreon? Is that a thing?
I've actually already written down to do an episode about success and defining success. So
Well,
we're
I wrote
gonna.
that down too.
Yeah, I think that's like you guys have gone into a great area of discussion. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for today. Let's do some shout outs. Steve, Cherry, thank you guys both so much for joining us today. If you can let us know where we can find you and what you're up to. Steven, starting with you.
She got smart. She called me out.
I did. I knew you guys were gonna go back and forth.
Darn it. I want to do this thing where I put this thing right side of my head. There you go. Plugging time. So you can find me on social media, StevenSpohn, spelled the proper way, on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook. You can find me on just about any platform under my real name. Twitch, you can find me Steve, INSPAWN, like the comic book, StevenSpohn. And you can pretty much find me anywhere talking about accessibility and philosophy. My main focus right now is on YouTube. I am trying really hard to get my youtube.com/StevenSpohn going. I'm actually pushing out of the gaming industry and pushing into the self-help space. I am very much doing videos now. My last video was on expand your empathy, teaching people how to be more empathetic towards one another, how to be proud of yourself. Was like I got about 1,000 views on that in a day, so I was really happy with that. I find in the world right now, pandemic life, what we really need is to get a better perspective on our lives. And so I'm hoping these videos will go out and help people realize that, just like Cherry said in the beginning, if Steve can do it, I can do it too. I want other people to look at me and say the same thing. If that guy can do XYZ, then I can do it too. And it's not inspiration porn. It's not anything that's looking down on me. It's simply follow along, and I will show you how I did it, and maybe you can figure your way out too.
Awesome. I always say it's not inspiration porn if we put ourselves in that position.
Correct.
That's the difference. That's
Somebody
the
put that on a t-shirt.
That's the power dynamic there.
Yup,
Is if
agency.
someone else is putting us up on that pedestal, that's inspiration porn. If we put ourselves there, it's because we want to inspire people. I actually started the other way around. I started on YouTube before Twitch, which was because I actually used to, I know we're wrapping up. I used to work in the film and TV industry. So I started off making vlogs when I couldn't, it's a very physical job, so I couldn't do that anymore. And that was why people were like, you should stream. You're really good at videos. Anyway, I didn't like YouTube. It's too much work.
It's a lot of work. Yeah.
But you can find me as CherryRae pretty much everywhere except Facebook, because I'm not on Facebook anymore. But yeah, I mostly talk about games development these days, but I do talk about like disability spaces a lot, and like how more inclusive all spaces need to be, whether that's professional games development or streaming or pretty much anything. That's a lot of what I do these days. I also don't talk about my job much because it's all secrets.
We'll talk about it after the show on the Patreon after show. Hunter, what about
There
you?
we go. I'm the Hunter Wild. I am so deep into Ghost of Tsushima right now.
Yes.
I'm 100% of the game. So there's going to be a little bit of, there might be a few more streams of it coming up here soon. It's quite a bit of content. You can find me at twitch.tv/thehunterwild. on Twitter at the Hunter Wild TV, and the TV at the end, and right here every Monday for this show with my incredible and brilliant co-host and co-owner of StreamerSquare, Loco.
Yes, so you can find me here. I also stream at twitch.tv/LOWCO. We talk about the streaming industry, gaming industry, weird stuff, and sometimes we play games. So we're doing a lot of Ghost of Tsushima right now. And yeah, that's pretty much me. And we do StreamerSquare. So if you guys enjoy this, make sure to follow. We will be doing a lot more Elgato giveaways every single week for the next couple weeks. So make sure to hit the follow button and tune in. And Hunter, if you want to shout out Elgato for sponsoring today's episode of The Stream Scene.
My absolute pleasure. This segment is brought to you by Elgato Wave as part of our Elgato partnership. The Elgato Wave 3 is a USB microphone that's more like a microphone and mixer all in one. With Elgato's Wavelink software, you can easily route your audio from hardware or software applications and control the volume for you and your audience independently, which is a huge feature. Elgato Wave 3 is available now at elgato.com, and you can type Elgato exclam, we'll leave it there, exclam Elgato in chat for more details.
Yep. Big thanks to Elgato for sponsoring the stream. Thank you guys for being here and watching the show. We will be back next Monday for the stream scene, and you can catch our next shows tomorrow. So make sure to tune back in tomorrow for some more stream informative content. We'll see you next time on the stream scene.